Canine Detection Collaborative, a detection dog training trio with Stacy Barnett.
Hi.
Robin Grubel.
Hey there.
And Crystal Wing.
What's up?
With humor and a big dose of theory, our trio talks practical training advice and features interviews with top trainers and scientists. It's Canine Detection Collaborative.
Hello, everybody. I'm Robin Grubel, and welcome to the Canine Detection Collaborative. I'm here with Crystal Wing.
Hello.
And Stacy Barnett.
Hey, how's it going?
And we are going to pick up from last time, our part 2 of the interview with Holly Bushard. We had some technical difficulties, if you remember from last time. So what we're doing is we're actually going through and taking some tidbits from, actually, it's not even tidbits, it's chunks of information from what Holly gave us and playing those and then discussing them and then playing another one and discussing that. With that, I think, Crystal, you've got the first clip for us.
But my primary partners are Whippets. My primary partner is Motto. When it came time to try and get the first elite champion Whippet, because I had 2, if I tried to move them up equally, I was going to sabotage both of them from being the first one. And I wanted him to be the first elite champion. I don't know why, such an arbitrary little goal, but it was amusing to me. So Motto got disproportionately trialed, and he's the primary dog that I trial with. Trialing with Whippets is a very different experience than trialing with some other breeds. And I am so grateful that I had the opportunity to play with them because they made me earn every inch. I mean, they spotted me nothing. You had to train it. You had to retrain it. You had to train it. You had to watch criteria. You just weren't gifted hardly anything. They were handler sensitive, leash sensitive, environmentally sensitive. I mean, they had all these liabilities, and they are a sight hound, not a scent hound, and they have a tendency to be more cat-like than dog-like. And I love the breed with my whole heart. I think they're just the coolest dogs, and I couldn't possibly be happier. But in terms of requiring me to get it right, they required me to be very attentive and very responsive and be creative and proactive in how I got them ready to trial. So it's been a process trying to make a Whippet look like a hunting dog, and it's been a lot of fun playing with it. I am just so grateful to my partners, Kai and Motto, for bringing me along for the ride and taking part in all of that. They feel soft, they're funny, they're easy to be with. They are lazy except for maybe 30 minutes of the day. They're impish. They aren't terribly needy in terms of they don't like to be touched and a lot of that. They're fairly independent. I think they're a really cool dog, and I think they're a really easy dog to own. I find them very nice to travel with. I really am crazy about Whippets. They need to be kept warm in the winter, and they can't tolerate flies in the summer. But if you can live with that, they're really neat little dogs. They're a little bit shy. They're a little bit quiet, but I like that too. So I love everything about them.
What advice would you give to people that if they're handling a non-traditional breed in Nosework?
Define your own success. Love what your dog is and accept that it won't be what it isn't. Trying to make a Whippet a lab isn't very satisfying. Motto will never be Maya. Maya will never be Motto. I have found it it's been just a blast to be in with a dog who is having to make bigger adjustments and who takes more breaking down of behaviors and more repetition and more care. I've found that to be fun. When we compete with non-traditional breeds, for sure, or for dogs with extra challenges, whether they're non-traditional or traditional, we have to define our own definition of success, and we have to fully embrace. We can't spend very much time comparing our dogs to anybody else. Comparison is the death of joy, and particularly with the non-traditional breeds or the dogs that have temperament challenges or environmental challenges, we have to celebrate wherever we can celebrate and just be happy with that. If we start thinking that we have to compare to our neighbor, we're setting ourselves up to fail.
I really, really, really love what she said about the non-traditional breeds. And just listening to this is just, first of all, it's so clear how much she really adores the dogs that she's working.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. And if you know Holly, you really actually, you see that with her. And the thing that I also loved was how she talked about really about loving and working the dog that you have and not trying to compare that dog to another dog and really trying to make sure that your goals and how you train is very specific to that dog. That's very personal for me because I have a very sensitive little dog. My 11-year-old miniature American Shepherd, Y is like one of those like ultra environmentally sensitive dogs. That comment that she made like really resonates because I can't have the same goals with him that I have with one of the girls because it would not be fair to him. Right. So when he has success, it's incredible. It's absolutely incredible. And I can't say, well, that success wasn't as good as your sister or whatever. Like that wouldn't be fair. And I hear also what she's saying about, how sensitive the dog is. And that really just kind of hit home with me and how important that is. And I also, as a trainer, honestly, the experience that I've had with Y and with my other non-traditional breed, which is my standard poodle, I think my experiences with them has made me a better instructor for other people. And I know that's the case with Holly. Holly started out with a Labrador when she was a canine officer, right? And now she's trialing Whippets at the highest level of competition in NACSW. And I think that experience is really makes her just a fantastic coach. And also, honestly, it makes her a really, really good judge in both NACSW and AKC. So, that experience, I think, is just priceless.
I totally valued her whole comment on selecting a dog and knowing that she was focusing on one dog, which meant to the deficit of another dog. And as someone who has 9 dogs at the moment, right? 4 of which are working and 3 puppies, it would be futile and I would end up exhausted and very frustrated a lot if I realized that there was not a cyclical time that came into how and why I train. And it's really important for us to trainers, especially if you have multiple dogs and I watch both of you guys do it depending on what competition's coming up and, all sorts of things as to what you focus on with each dog, that some of the other dogs, it's not that they're less important, but they go on to more of a maintenance cycle instead of a teaching and training cycle and testing cycle, which actually is a proponent of why you should spend a whole lot of time on your foundations. Because when you spend a lot of time and invest the time in the foundation, then that's still there. If you give them like a 2-week break and then you kind of knock off the rust a little bit and you kind of pick up where you left off and you can put the polish on them for trials or, testing some of the skills that may happen for testing or trialing, come out, okay, I got to knock this off a little bit or just do a little polishing, a spit shine on it, and it all comes back. And so I think that's something that is important for those of us who have multiple dogs. The day for only when I had 2, right?
it takes the stress off too, right?
It does.
Because, if you don't feel like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? Like my dog's not going to be ready. If it's literally just shining them up before whatever they're doing because your foundations are so good, you're like, okay, well, this week we're going to work on motivation for you and, you'll be good to go. And
maybe something you're doing with the one, you're like, oh, this is the nugget that I needed for the other dog.
Yeah.
I know last year we got in a good conversation, Sarah Brisky, when she was our club president, and we talked about latent learning. And so it's not even just in the foundations, but it's that they don't have to already have them, but just in while they're learning and while you're teaching them, teaching this concept, letting them sleep on it, let it soak in a little bit and then come back. It's like it just soaks in and it's already there. And I'm finding that with Radish right now because she's having her first little in heat moment. So she's now, a grown little pup. She's not so puppy anymore. My little Radish. So
she's a whole big vegetable now.
She is a big vegetable. Her Radish. And so, hey, that's our hashtag. So currently I'm letting her kind of be on ice for a few things. Because we have an IGP trial coming up and it wasn't even on my sites, but now it's okay. Well, can we get Yukon ready for a tracking title? And can we get Checkmate ready for possibly an IGP1 and not putting pressure on them, but trying to find the time to train plus work, plus keep Yukon up on a search and rescue stuff. So, when she's mentioned the whole disproportionate trial time, whoo, I feel it.
Right.
Yeah.
We're always balancing. And even not just with one sport, sometimes multiple sports and activities. And then, of course, careers and life. And yes, I'll be quiet now.
No, because I was just thinking, which really goes back to this whole concept of multitasking, right? That multitasking is actually a myth.
Yes.
And it was originally, in case, here's your little tidbit of science for today. It was actually came about as a concept with computer science and computers, that computers would multitask and they could do a couple of different things at once. So, you think about your computer, you set it to uploading a YouTube video, and then you go do something else on your computer. Technically, that's what multitasking is, but it also, the thing that you have to think about is that it's talking about processor usage. And you can overload your processor usage when my Mac keeps telling me your RAM is fully used. You can't use anymore.
My Chrome, today my Chrome, the tech guy had to come in and I said, why does my Chrome thing keep saying that it's out of memory? Like I'm just using the internet. It's a Chromebook. And he goes, well, how many tabs do you have open? And I was like, well, I grouped them. Because grouping makes it better, right? Then it looks like there's only 5 and we counted it. Guess how many tabs I had open?
How many?
74.
Oh my gosh.
I had to close some tabs.
Yeah, you did have to close some
Sometimes
tabs.
I feel like I have 74 tabs open.
Oh, that was just my computer screen. That wasn't my brain.
and so the fact is, it's actually more inefficient for you to multitask.
Didn't they have a study that's saying like you literally can't multitask? That multitask just isn't. It's just a rapid switching, right, between your focuses.
Right. How rapidly can you switch your focus? Yeah. And, when I'm going from social media outputting stuff for Canine Census Foundation, I don't do updating cattle genetic records at the same time. The cattle genetic records are like close down all of the rest of the tabs. And those are the only things open on my computer because that takes lots of bandwidth. And you have to get them correct because we're doing DNA testing.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So I think it comes back to the same thing with dogs. I see huge leaps and bounds with my training. And it seems to be totally associated with the fact that I have to pack the dogs up and go to like a different state. Because obviously I can't do it sitting at home of being like, you know what, I'm going to focus on this dog for a week. This is what we're going to do.
Yep.
Somewhere along the way, that doesn't compute unless I have to leave my house. Well, now I'm so thinking about that. I'm like, wow. Yeah.
And
maybe
here, the rest of us just want to go to your house. So, although we want you there, we can't just like swap houses.
I outlined my dog training field today, you guys. So
that's awesome.
But thinking about Holly and how she was putting together, she was making a conscious decision, and good for her. It's okay. It's not like the other dog was, had a horrible life or something.
Wait, they don't just live to trial? That's not their favoriteest thing ever? Like they're not sitting around thinking about the next time they get to trial and the ribbons they get to wear and take photos?
Yeah. I think prizes. And actually, I'm just going to make a funny, quippy joke. My dogs, when they're done, they get to have a picture taken with their ribbons, and their sit stays are beautiful for that. They're like, okay, mom's just going to decorate us again. And boring. Except for Prize, because she barks at me whenever she gets her ribbon taken. She like shuffles her feet and then she barks at me, and it's just really it's usually just hurry up to take the ribbon. I want my dinner. So
that explains a lot of the pictures you share of her barking. Then,
yeah, it's really funny. I'm like, just hold still, and she's like shuffling her feet and barking, and shuffling her feet and barking. How did I condition this? I have no idea. It must back chain to dinner somehow.
It's a whole chain. Yeah.
Yeah. It's got to end at dinner or something, because otherwise
because if she then shuffles her feet and barks, you've now put it on a variable reinforcement schedule. So it depends. She's trying to figure out how many times she has to shuffle her feet and bark before you'll actually say we're done and I'll give you dinner.
I'm just trying to take the picture in between the barks, which is so I'm just rapidly hitting the button,
But anyway,
I'm going to go with Holly's idea of being creative.
Squirrel. Yes.
And Holly said that, in being creative, that she was given no gifts. And so Prize made me think about that, just the name of Prize. So I'll transition us back to that about, that her Whippets haven't given her any slack. She's really had to be super creative in how she trains and very proactive. Yes. And I know she's talking about a non-traditional breed, but I feel the same way about my, I'll say air quotes, traditional Dutch Shepherd. I feel like he hasn't given me a lot of gifts either. And I like how she said, not even just your non-traditional, but you're difficult. Yes. Was that the word she used? I think.
Yes.
Yeah. I really can appreciate that, because I know after my unicorn Quinn, I thought, I'm going to tweak a few things, but really, I feel like I've got this dog training thing down.
They keep you humble. They keep you humble.
And then I got a Yukon, and I said, all right, so none of the things
I had this incredible dog. I know everything now.
Yeah.
I thought I could do a lot of things very similarly, and Yukon said no.
No.
So I really appreciate her.
He's still saying no.
Yeah, he does too.
Yeah.
It has to be his idea. And so that's a difficult thing to train. Yeah. So I really liked when she said, the whole idea of no gifts and you have to earn every inch. I felt that to the core.
Mm-hmm.
I really get that, because I have my poodle, right, Joey. I mean, he's retired now, right? But I did compete with him. He got into NW3. He has a title and a half or whatever. He is a dog that has no appreciable food drive and no toy drive. Like he was literally bred to look pretty, which he does really a good job at.
Yes, he's very handsome.
So he's very, very handsome. But training him, because honestly, he didn't really care about the food that I had, right? I had to get creative. And that's what, like that comment about, creative training. It's, trying to think about something in a different way, like from a different angle, that I think when you have that, when you start out and you have this like really amazing dog, like I had Judd, right? And he's like, he just loved to search. He was just this incredible dog. But you can't take that experience and then assume it's going to apply to the challenging dog.
Absolutely. And it's one of those things where I've really started thinking about progression plans, which concentrate on the behavior that you're trying to get, not necessarily how you get the behavior, which has been really important because I've trained 6 or 7 different dogs, all using the same progression plan.
Yep.
But 3 of them are in like one category of this is how I learn. The other 3 are in a different category of this is how I learn. And then, you have like one outlier who's like, no, we have to do it the different way.
Yeah. It's kind of like that progression plan is kind of more of an empirical formula, right? Kind of thinking back to, chemistry days, right? The empirical formula, right? That kind of, that base level.
I blocked that out.
You block that out.
Block that out.
See, no, I have to sound a little intelligent after sounding not intelligent at all with Dr. Degree.
I'm in the art room. They talk about that across the hall in math and science. Like I stay across in the art hall. So,
well, I just had to say that because honestly, like after listening to Lauren,
a degree,
Dr. Lauren Degree, right? I felt like oh my gosh, I don't know anything. So I had to throw that out there.
Okay, awesome,
to make myself feel a little smarter again.
Okay, but no comparisons.
But it is. It's like an empirical formula, right? That progression plan, and then you're changing that, right? You're modifying that based on what the dog needs to be able to get the best outcome, right, for that dog.
Which goes back to what Holly was saying of having with a non-traditional breed. Sometimes you have to be really creative on how you create the learning opportunity for that dog.
Yeah.
And, that's actually canine trainers should be really creative, because unless you are pre-selecting, which a lot of the, detection dog, our federal government has a really, really standard thing of the dog must retrieve a metal pipe 3 times, check, stuff like that. Or, it must hold on to I think they don't use metal pipes anymore, it must retrieve a PVC pipe, 3 times and actively play, check. And it's just basically got this whole checklist, right? It's a recipe. They're looking for a recipe. Dog training isn't a recipe. It's actually a craft.
Yes.
Right. And it's an art and it's a craft, and you're an apprentice for a really, really, really long time.
Like your whole career.
But yeah. If you're smart, you realize that you're an apprentice for your entire career, and the dogs are the teachers.
That's right.
And there's never, I was listening, who was I listening to as a podcast, and they were talking about how there's never the best or the top.
Correct.
And that goes into the comparison piece, but everyone has their specialties, and within those specialties, there still really isn't the best. And so quit striving for that, because there is no such thing, and it's a waste of effort. And I think that goes back to when she said, that we can't compare. And then you kind of mentioned about listening to Dr. DeGrief, and kind of feeling inadequate. And so then, okay, I felt
a good word for it.
Yeah. How about we admire her greatly?
She's amazing.
Well, so that goes to the comparison piece. And I think that sometimes comparison can be a really powerful tool, because it does give you that feeling or that belief that there is something greater, that there's something, more rewarding out there, because you can see that it's possible because you see it in someone else. And I see that in both of you. And so that's something comparison wise that can be a powerful tool. But I think so often we kind of have these upward comparisons instead of like downward comparisons. And I heard Brene Brown, I love her, right?
Yeah.
She was talking with Dax and somebody else, and they were talking about the upward and downward comparisons. And it was kind of interesting. But when I think about my dogs, I really did have a struggle going from Quinn to Yukon, and I went through some like serious low self-confidence. The training was just, it was a downward spiral for me. It was so rough. Oh. So I think that's something too, to recognize as trainers, because we are learning this craft, and each time it's a different dog in a new situation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's powerful. And we're all sitting there going, yeah, I feel that.
I feel, and, thinking about to the transitions or the dogs that you've trained, you're like, oh yeah, I remember that downward spiral when what worked on the last 3 dogs or 2 dogs didn't work on this dog. And, and I see it in students.
Yes.
When they come to class or come to a training, or I get that message on Facebook, right? I don't know what to do. And you can read between the dogs of, I'm ready to give up.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Okay. And Thomas told me a great line.
Yeah. Who is Thomas?
Thomas Stokes. Sorry.
Okay.
adore Thomas. He's so great, gun dog trainer. And so he said, I was taking an online class with UConn, and he kind of a couple times was like, dude, I don't know what to tell you, because we were struggling so hardcore. And he wrote a message back and said, well, it's never too late to give up. And I was like, okay, true things.
Ouch.
Wow.
And so that went back to latent learning that we talked about earlier. And I did. I put him on ice. I let him grow up. And we quit working on things that he wasn't ready to work on, such as basic obedience. And things are really going great for us now because he's 5 and he's grown up. And now I can't stop training him. We can't stop working together. It's wonderful.
All the gerbils grew up and looked in the same direction.
That's it. The rave turned more into that country line dance, and we're all going the same direction now. It's good stuff. It's really nice.
Okay, Crystal, I actually see a t-shirt coming on that one. But I think about we spend a lot of time with our young dogs pushing so hard because we want to get out and trial, we want to get out and test, we want to go deploy, we want to do all of the things. And we actually end up doing a lot of damage. And it's not damage. You just end up actually training in problems that you then have to go back and fix because you're trying to Band-Aid a whole bunch of stuff together that the dog's just not ready for. And it's interesting to look at, the 2 Black Lab girls are 7 months old. And then I've got Flair, who's just getting ready to turn 2. And I'm pretty proud of myself. I put some stuff together. So we actually have started doing blind retrieves.
Oh, wow.
I know, which in my world, and she does fetch on cue.
Nice.
And all of these things, but I could do it in such a way that because she had all of this foundation stuff from the detection dog world that I could pull on to put together. And I'm looking at the young girls and I'm like, you know what? You weren't ready for hardcore sit training, which is in my world is like, no, you have to sit, stay while I run around the yard and I'm feeding other dogs cookies and you have to sit and stay there. They're still not ready for that. That would make their head explode. Sometimes it has to do with the bringing together all of your different components and letting the dog grow up.
Yeah, so much letting him grow up. I'm having that big time. I've seen the effects of that with myself and others' dogs.
Right.
Because then if we don't, well, we try to force into a situation and then we have to overhandle the situation. And then that gets us into a whole other world of problems. I think actually Holly talked about that. Let's see what she had to say.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's a good topic.
I'm going to say this with humility, but you asked me my opinion, so I get to state my opinion. I think there is a real tendency to overhandle. There's just a tendency to overextend the handler's role in the search. So when I see handlers taking their dog by the neck or the shoulders and pulling their dogs around like a flashlight, I really feel like that is one of the biggest mistakes because I think it dishonors the talent of the dog to be micromanaged and dragged around in a search area. That's the thing that I'm probably most sensitized to and the mistake that I find most cringeworthy. We've asked the dog to find it. We've given the cue to search, and then we've told him how to do it. And I know that there's always times when the handler has something to contribute, and the handler should contribute it. But a lot of people have a hard time staying in their lane and separating when they should suggest and when they should just take notes. And so that would be the thing that I think I see the most that I think is the biggest mistake. And I think people, when nervous, do it more rather than less, because when we're nervous, we want to be in control, to feel in control. Mm-hmm. And so I probably see an amplification of what they do when they're practicing, just because the nerves get the best of them. And I humbly submit that if you go back to my earliest competition days, I have a ton of footage of me doing exactly the same thing. So I'm not standing by when people are doing this and judging them, because I know that I used to do this too. And I know that it was part of my evolution to do less and less and less. And I know I'm still working on it. So it's not that I'm standing there poking fingers at anyone, because I know I came from there too. But it is the mistake that I made in the past that I regret the most.
I love that. And actually, which really hit home listening to that was it's just this memory of starting trialing with Judd, right? And I overhandled that poor boy. Man, he was so tolerant of me. And I had no idea either. I would look at my score sheets. This is, the early years, right? I look at my score sheets, and there's this one judge that's local to me. So I'm going to call him out. Sergio de Rojas. He's an awesome guy, really, really awesome guy. And Sergio would write on my score sheets, "Stop crowding the dog. Stop crowding." I'm sitting there going, I'm not crowding my dog. I'm not crowding my dog. I was crowding the heck out of him. I mean, it really was and what was, and now in CSW, like they, or up until just recently, they allowed us to buy our old videos. They were the official video that they used for their footage. That was part of their coffers. Right. And I bought this, I went back to the NW2 and the threes, and I'm watching it going, oh gosh, this poor dog. Right. And it was just amazing how tolerant this dog was of me, and how he let me kind of, grow and learn. And, we ended up doing okay in the end, but wow, it sure was a learning curve. That comment, just I just get all the feels for that, because I'm watching my videos going, I'm sure glad we figured that out.
And it's really interesting, because overhandling, you think a lot of overhandling that you're up in with the dog, you're attached with a leash, you're doing all of this stuff. I see people all of the time overhandling their dogs off leash. Right? I mean,
okay.
Because,
yeah.
and it's not even so much that you're attached because you've got that line.
Yeah.
They're over directing. No, you have to go this way. We can't go that way. You have to go this way.
Yep.
It's the no, check here. No, stop sniffing that. No, keep walking. All of this sort of stuff. And it turns into, especially for the off leash stuff. So I'm thinking outside off leash. They're not working. I'm like, well, maybe you should walk faster. And
yes,
they're like,
this is a totally different, I'm sitting here going, whoa, I didn't think of that, because we could be, if we're doing off leash generally it's indoors, because we don't really have the option unless it's a secured area or secured-ish. Right. So it's usually an indoor thing. And I mean, I see a lot of people, their leash becomes like their steering wheel.
Right. And,
right.
And
it's interesting to hear people doing it off leash.
People do it off leash, and especially when you get nervous. Oh my gosh. Dude, guilty. So guilty. I get nervous. I think I have an out of body experience and start talking. And most of my students, I'm sure, would be looking at me going, who is that person? Because that's not Robin. Well, Robin's really nervous.
That's Robin's twin.
Yes.
That's certification
Roberta.
Twin.
Yes.
That's Roberta. It's not Robin.
Exactly. And she just starts talking. And, it's been really funny to work with a couple of different breeds of dogs how my nervousness and as I've gotten better as a trainer, I've actually started teaching them to ignore the fact that they think I'm stupid, because I train them that way.
Right.
And that when I'm talking, because a lot of what happens too is when I am instructing, they actually are off doing their other thing. And I'm talking in the background to whatever students I have going on.
You know what else is, which is kind of interesting, because I think the idea that we don't necessarily know when we're overhandling, right? Because we're not saying, hi, I'm overhandling, right? We're not carrying a sign that says I'm overhandling. And even when we think we don't overhandle, right? So watching even my later videos of Judd. So there we were competing at Summit. So I'm not talking, lower levels. I'm talking upper levels, right? And what I would see is every time I missed a hide, it was because at that moment, right when he was about to hit that scent cone, that's when I interjected. I was like, oh, come over here, right? Let's work over here. And it never seemed to fail. It's like, I'm watching the video going, you would have had that hide. Just leave him alone. Let him work.
I did this to a handler not too long ago. Like last week. And we were working bomb dogs, interiors, safe location. We're actually working on self-confidence for the dogs, this dog. And one of the ways I work on self-confidence on going out hunting is I treat it like an area search. I want the dog to go out and clear the room by itself. Mom has to, or the handler has to stay back here. And so here's this person, right? She's getting ready to walk forward to her dog. I reach out and grab her hoodie and clotheslined her.
Oops.
Because as soon as you move, sometimes you distract them off whatever they're doing.
Because clotheslining her definitely didn't distract anybody.
No, you know what? Bless her heart. She was
subtle,
awesome.
Are you?
No, I've stopped being subtle because what happens sometimes is when you're subtle, people don't get it.
I think she got that message, Robin.
Okay. And clothesline might have been a little bit harsh, but she wasn't sprinting. So it was it was a little tug on her hood and she stood still. So she wasn't flying backwards. Yeah. But I do feel bad sometimes because the students, I'll reach out and I'll grab them and I'll be like, oh, I think I might need to start putting a disclaimer is that I may physically touch you during training. Because I can
add that to the waiver.
Yeah, no kidding. Because I can stop you because I can read something that's going on in the dog and I know physically what we're supposed to do, but it's so not going to come out my mouth fast enough.
Yeah.
And it's still, and that overhandling is really hard.
And then going back to the non-traditional breeds, and this isn't necessarily non-traditional breed, or maybe more the sensitive dogs, right? I look at why my little mini Aussie, and I found, and actually I got kind of started doing this because I saw Holly work her Whippets, right? She works her Whippets on the Flexi. And I was starting to think, I'm like, you know what? Why is so leash sensitive? Where if his leash is just a little too heavy, he doesn't feel confident enough to move out and work independently. So I started working him on this little toy poodle Flexi. It's like this little tiny, he's small. Okay. So granted, he's 25, 26 pounds, but I work him on this little tiny Flexi. He feels more free. He has kind of the illusion of being off leash, but at the same time, he doesn't like to be off leash because it makes him nervous. So having the Flexi on makes him feel comfortable enough.
He's secure
on the leash.
Right. And I have seen people, and I actively use the Flexi in certain situations with the bomb dog, especially. Yeah. Because, and what I've seen from some of the law enforcement guys is they really like the Flexi for doing vehicles.
Okay.
Especially if you have a really fast dog. Because then you don't have to try and keep up.
I tried a Flexi with powder. And
that'd be scary. Yeah, that'd be scary.
Terrifying. It was terrifying. So then I tried a shorter Flexi because I figure, okay, you can't hit your top speed.
Yeah.
No, it still didn't work. No, it was bad.
So, but these are dogs who are used to working on 6-foot leads.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Right.
Yeah.
And
she's on a 15-foot. I work a 15-foot.
Right. And I'll use that for Dash. And he learns an easy So that's coming up to the end. But what's really nice about the Flexi is it also adds in a sense of constant pressure.
Yeah.
From the handler. So your handler bias actually tends to be diminished because it's constant pressure.
Maybe that's why it works amazing on Brava and Prize. And I found like with Brava, for instance, I found out that, off leash. So I tried off leash at a summit at Estes Park last year. And I found out she's Goldilocks, right? So if she gets too far away, she misses hides because she needs to have like a certain distance.
A governor.
Yeah. But then if I have like a normal line on her, sometimes that inhibits her a little bit. It keeps her in the area, right? And we'll overwork an area or we risk a fringe. So having her on that Flexi, it's actually giving me that beautiful kind of balance. And maybe it's that constant pressure. So I'm not adding that handler bias. I mean, that's a possibility. Right. That's the reason why it works.
And, the Flexi will always be speedier at taking up the slack.
Yeah.
Right.
So I use a 26-foot Flexi. Yeah. It's
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love the 30-foot Flexi for IGP tracking. We just did that this evening, and it's just the constant, tension. There's no difference. And I don't have to worry about my line work. I can just worry about focusing on the dog and the dog's body language. And I can work on my line work in other ways.
And I think we will all agree this is in no way, shape, or form an endorsement of Flexi leashes for random walking of your dog.
Right.
They're used for a specific use.
We don't want. Oh my gosh, the Flexi police are going to come after us.
So it's not good in the veterinarian's office when other dogs are injured to let your dog run around on a Flexi and jump on everybody and bite.
And it's not good if you have multiple Flexis with multiple dogs that you're not watching.
Right.
Okay. I hope sarcasm comes through.
I know.
Yeah.
So,
okay, I'm going to put us back on topic. Because you guys have said so many things and I'm sitting here writing notes because it's like killing me, Steve.
That's what you do. Yes.
Well, I know that's what I do. So you were talking about, go back to the concept of overhandling. I'm trying to think about myself and others I've seen, especially observing this summer, and kind of why people overhandle. And I do believe there's a lot of nerves just being in front of other people, because I do think we train by ourselves a lot. And then also the pressure of the people we don't know and how are they going to react. And so there's all of that. So then I think that also goes back to a lack of confidence, not only in ourselves, but sometimes in our dog, and a combination of the two. And I think we've all done it because we've all been in different levels of confidence in our abilities and our dog's abilities. And then I also go to the thought of I think a lot of us are lacking in our scent theory. And so because we don't really know what's happening, we can't predict or help. And so then we tend to overstep. And a lot of times too, I think it's just simply either we or our dog isn't ready. And I think that's why a lot of the overhandling happens. And so I was curious. I loved her comment. We have to know when to suggest versus take notes. So kind of putting all those thoughts out there in the universe. How do you learn that skill, or how do you advise it of how to suggest versus taking notes? What are your ideas?
So what I teach, this is what I teach, is I try to teach people to first take notes, and they have to get really, really, really good at letting their dog work independently without their help. Then they are allowed to start to suggest when it makes sense. So I think it comes down to, what do you do first? So if you can really build their skills of observation and allowing the dog to work independently, once they have that, you can say, okay, now you can start to think about suggesting a little bit. And if you look at the levels of Nosework competition, it actually lines up really well with that, right? Because at the NW1 level, there's a single hide. You just have to go and run into a scent cone, right? And then as you start to move up, and then NW2, you know how many hides there are. You start to move up, NW3, now you have a range, 0 to 3 hides. Now you have to start thinking about your search area. And you still don't really even have to suggest all that much, maybe just a smidgen. Start to get into elites, things start to tighten up, right? You start to have to really kind of think more. You have to start managing your search area just a little bit more. And I think there's this natural progression. And I think what happens is when people start to try to push up the levels too fast, the dog's not ready, maybe they're not ready. That's when the rubber hits the road, the first thing to happen is they overhandle and they start to, basically the dog's just, they're trying to force it, right? They're trying to force the search to happen versus allowing it to happen.
So what I hear you saying is kind of to let the odor teach the dog, and that's how they take notes. What do suggestions look like in your world?
Suggestion to me is just more thinking about your search area and just making sure that, especially if you understand it, like what's going on with the airflow, is just literally getting, if you need to suggest, getting the dog in the way of potential odor versus, sniff the chair, please. It's not a check this, check this, check this. It's literally just, can we clear this area over here? Because I think once we, especially with the odors that we're working with these big, huge scent cones, right? We don't need to sniff every chair. The dog goes by. If the dog is focused and the dog is odor obedient, they're going to catch it, right? Unless, of course, you have an updraft or if the odor is going the other direction. And then you have to think about, okay, well, then maybe get downwind of it. So there's actually very little suggestion. It's just more, for me, it's when I handle, it's just more if the search area requires it or the amount of time that we have available, like maybe we're really, really pushed on time, then I'm really going to try to think about just searching the area in a logical flow. So I kind of think of it more as flow, how I'm going to flow through the area rather than very, saying, like sniff this, sniff this, sniff. I don't need to do that. I have these huge scent cones and I've got a great little nose on that dog, right? Unless I'm going to put my nose down there and check it, it's it's not necessary. Yeah. That's my soapbox.
I want to know where your scent goggles are. Yeah, no, I was thinking about what I have evolved. I hope I have evolved into is more of a take notes person to begin with, because as a trainer, you actually spend a lot of time asking your dogs questions and they have to be able to answer. And if you're not listening, you don't know where to go to train.
Yep.
And then you can step in. And I was even thinking about, the overhandling with the girls. And when I say the girls, I'm talking about Ducati and Bristol. We're starting to do more defined nosework type of stuff. We're doing ORT type of exercises, right? And Ducati is one of those, you put your hand there, I'll put my nose there, I'll sniff it. You can be stepping on my tail. I don't care. And I happened to train her first. And I got Bristol out and was doing the exact same thing. And Bristol's like, I was watching her and I'm standing there and I was like, you are not performing how you normally work. I don't understand. And it's funny because I video recorded the whole session. And I went back and watched it and realized that because I'm having this, raising a working dog thing. So I was doing a total brain dump out loud so the students could hear my training process as I was going through it. And I had a whole conversation around with her about the fact that, oh, you don't want me up in your business. I got it. Let's try it this way. And she nailed it. And I was like, okay, so I now know that we have to go about training this type of thing for you instead of doing how I was doing it with Ducati, because they're training and learning at different levels. And so based on the different types of the learning that the dogs are doing, you come up with all these different types of drills to meet your progression plans. And of course, I think Holly was talking about the different types of drills that she might have because of the non-traditional breeds that she was working in. So, Crystal, I think we have a quote for that one, don't we?
I'm pretty good at problem solving. I'm really good at problem solving. And I'm really good at breaking things down into little pieces. And probably my niche is building little drills. Little, not a lot of prop, not a lot of complexity, just little drills that solve big problems. And I learned to develop little drills because I had to develop little drills because I had all these little holes that needed plugging. So I could isolate out the little issue and find a little game or a little drill for that issue. And that has, I think, been a real gift too, is being able to do those things to help teams get better. I can problem solve the little things because I had to in order to get a lot of momentum with some of my partners. The piece that I probably brought to the table is I never tried to advance past what they could do perfectly. So I always wanted my picture to be perfect. And if that meant that the hides had to be simple, or if that meant that the motivation had to be high, or that meant I had to set them up for success by training at the right time of day, no matter what it took, I wanted every repetition to look fantastic. And I put the appearance and the habit above the complexity of the searching. So we never got ahead of our skill set. And by keeping it so that my Whippets always thought it would be an easy, big win, I got more out of them because when they approach the start line, they assume it's going to be an easy, big win. Mm-hmm. And I rarely get less than bright, engaged work because they expect it to be a fun, fast, furious, high reinforcement game. And they'll tolerate long stretches in blank and they'll tolerate all the rest because 90% of their training reinforces that this is a great deal for them. It had to always feel like a great deal for them. And by keeping that the first thing, keep the picture perfect, keep it a great trade for them. By attending to that first, I think I got the most I could out of who they were. I think that's the cornerstone to what kept them successful. Yep. And keeping attitude first, attitude first. And if attitude isn't where we want it, we don't go anywhere else. It's all attitude first, and there isn't second place. Attitude is everything.
Attitude first, friends. Attitude first.
I would actually agree with the attitude first, even beyond what she said, because one of the things that I've really noticed with especially Dash is if he is too distracted or and some of that comes from how we were initially playing. And Crystal gave us some really good check-in engagement games that have been transformational in how we now move through and begin our searches. That if I can't get him to do a simple nose to the center of the palm of my hand, he's mentally not in the place I need him to be to go to work. And it's actually helped focus him to the point where he's like, oh, we're doing the thing. Yes, buddy, we're doing the thing. And he's like, rock on, mom, I got it. Because it also, to be perfectly honest, helps manage my expectations. It relieves me. If I do this simple thing like a hand touch and you can't do that, that tells me we're not ready to begin. My expectations are managed so that I am not setting him up to fail. And that's what Holly was talking about, is she always set up all of this stuff so her Whippets always succeeded. And I think that is also something that we tend to do, is we push too hard, too fast, and too long when they're too young.
So the whole attitude thing, I love that. I call it mood. And when I'm working with, especially like my, with Y, right? Because he's my most sensitive little dude. And I know the secret to him being successful for an entire NW3 trial, which is 6 searches over the course of a day, is mood management. And if I can get him in the right mood, it's like the door opens and he says, okay, now you can motivate me. right? So I have to get him happy. And if he's in that mood, then we can go play. Yeah, I totally love that. The other thing that I loved was that she said was also about trying to, you're going for that perfect picture, right? So rather than kind of thinking like, well, that's good enough, and then just moving on, it's like you're building on what you want to create, and you always have that vision of what you want to create, and you're always working towards that. And having that vision is so critical if you just, and you have to have that. It's that perfect picture of your foundations, because then honestly, it makes things easy. You have that perfect picture, you go for that perfect piece of it. Everything else becomes easy.
So I'm going to take us off track a little because that's what I do. You said mood management.
Yeah.
That's been the last 20 years of my high school art teaching experience.
Yeah.
Because think about
Can't
teenagers.
even imagine. Not only the teenagers, but yourself. Wow.
I think your eye twitched a little.
It did. I know.
No, but I that's the first thing I have to do is, some teachers talk about how they have to be like these hard butts, until Christmas. And then, no, I come in day one and it's about having this fast, fun, furious, like she said, experience and get the kids in the right mood. And so I bring this up because they're learners. And
I want to take your class.
But it's just like our dogs. I feel like my teenagers are just like my dogs in a lot of ways. I handle them in very similar ways because I have to have them in this positive, happy attitude that's in the right amount of focus and the right amount of drive to want to do the thing.
They don't bite, do they?
Oh yeah, some do. That's a story for another podcast. But
sorry.
It is. It's about getting that attitude first and getting the mood set right so that they can actively want to learn and be in that right place. Whether it's the kid that's bouncing all over the room or the other kid that doesn't want to be there. Isn't that kind of the same with our dogs?
Yeah.
So it's the dog that's maybe not sold on that activity yet. Maybe it's the dog like checkmate. Oh my gosh, I've never had such a struggle teaching a dog how to track before. It's just not something he enjoys. And so I'm really having to do some problem solving to figure out how to make him enjoy it as much as I do so that we're not both bashing our heads in. So it's about setting up that success. And what I've done is I've really had to go back and make short little fun games like what she said, even with IGP tracking, to make it fun and successful. And that really is the key. It's just that attitude first, the mood first, and the building of success. That's for any learner. That's human, that's dog, that's across the board.
I totally agree. And it's interesting to think about the whole, the struggle of you're having to find a way to make whatever you're doing fun for him, because you can tell that the dog really doesn't like to do what you're doing.
Yeah.
Right?
Especially when you think it's something they're going to love. And that's also contradictory because you think this should be natural. You've got a great nose and you're a Malinois and
you should do it. And he's like, no.
When can I bite the thing?
For me, that's a really interesting concept because, in my world, we just wash the dog. You let the dog go find the job that it's supposed to do. I had a border collie that I had trained up for cadaver work. And within 3 months of being able to certify him, he wouldn't come out of the truck at search and rescue training. He's like, dude, I'm out. I'd finally get him out of the truck because I could throw a Frisbee and he'd chase it. And then I took him to herding dog practice, and dude, totally different dog. And he went off and was winning herding titles with the instructor because that's the job he was supposed to do. So, in my world, that's a little different. But in the trialing world, you guys absolutely, some of the creative stuff that I see you guys come up with is phenomenal because you want to do this thing. This is your sport. This is what you want to do. So you come up with a really interesting way to make it fun for the dog. So, that being creative and the little drills, which go back to figuring out how to teach the skills, the individual skills that you need the dog to know, having those individual skills be perfect, and then chaining them all together.
Yeah. Always slicing it down. That's successful training in my world.
Thinner, slice it thinner.
Yeah.
We're lumpers. Yeah. Humans are lumpers.
And sometimes lumping works and you fast track and it's good to go. But you got to know when you can fast track and when you have to, slice it down.
Agreed.
I did a class on containers earlier this year. It was 6 weeks of containers, and all we did was slice and dice and figure out those little tiny pieces of all this. What looks like containers themselves looks like the easiest type of search there is. And when I know, and when people first start with this activity or sport or whatever it is, right? They see containers and are like, that's a piece of cake, right? The dog just has to pick the right one. And I'm like, oh, we have
luggage. Luggage is actually kind of hard. You guys were like, do you want luggage? I'm like, I always want luggage, because you actually have to teach the dog. If you're really doing luggage well, you have to teach the dog to sniff the seams, which is what you guys are doing in containers.
Well, they've changed a lot of the containers. So in AKC, we could do luggage, but way back when, in the early days of Nosework, we had luggage in NW2 and up, and they've changed that partially because honestly, containers is just freaking hard, and you'd have trials where no one would pass because of a stinky piece of luggage that maybe it was just like that's kind of an interesting smelling thing, right? And so now we have something a little bit more standardized. So we have kind of either cardboard boxes, or we have paint cans, or we have these little plastic tool boxes from the Dollar Tree, or we've got different things like that. So they've kind of standardized on that. Unless you're in AKC, in which case you can do luggage. We can get luggage at the elite level. And honestly, you were talking about luggage earlier today, and I'm like, I have some extra luggage. I think I'm going to start to work on some of that, because I haven't really paid that much attention to it. But, the containers themselves are just so complicated that you can spend months and just slice those down into the smallest little pieces. You've got your flat bags, you've got your tall stuff, you've got a little bit of odor, a lot of odor. You've got, direction of the airflow. You've got, whether
Don't
you've
stomp
got
on the bag.
Yeah. You've got, dog drool. You've got distractions. I'm sorry. You have the 6 Ds.
You do.
I know. Sorry. Right.
You lost me after 4.
I know.
Right.
I know.
But
but it's,
But even with that, it goes back to what she said, where it's attitude first, then you can add in the precision. So if they're not excited and happy about going and doing the thing, you're not going to be able to build in the precision until they have the desire to do it.
Correct.
Yeah. I threw a D in for you.
You did. Well, and then, the whole concept of the desire to do it, and then you're moving over into precision, but she still had a plan on how to get there. I mean, she's shaping the behavior that you want. She wants it to be very, very precise. But the interesting thing for me, if you think about it, that means she had the behavior defined.
Yeah.
She knew what the end product looked like. And I think it's so important for people. One of the classes that I might actually dust off for next winter is my train final response class, where we actually spend a week defining the behavior that you want out of your dog. And it's just having people be able to write it out, right?
Yeah.
And it's an operational definition. What do you want your dog to do? I want my dog to find odor and alert. Okay.
Well, we all do that, right? We all want that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's that look like?
This is a little bit of a hallmark of a more experienced trainer, right? It's because when you start, the more you've seen and the more you've experienced, the better that's defined. And you start to define it in different permutations. It's like, well, when I have a dog that acts like this is kind of what I'm looking. And you start to kind of put those pieces together. And I think that's kind of like what Holly is seeing, right?
Right.
So she's worked with a ton of teams. She's judged a ton. she's got a really crystal clear picture of what she wants to create. And I think that the better picture you have, I mean, a lot of it, the more you watch, and if if you're starting it on your journey or whatever, the best thing you can do is kind of, watch other teams. Don't just watch your dog, observe.
Absolutely.
You'll start to figure out maybe, oh, that's what I'm trying to create. Right. And a lot of times you may not even know it until you experience it. And that's part of the journey.
Plus you get to learn scent theory. There isn't always an added benefit.
Yeah.
Well, and I always go back to my imagination's your best tool. And I think the more that you observe, the more that you can become creative, because you can see where one person did this, one person did that. And I think that's where I really liked how she problem solves, and she uses the dog's innate abilities, and she talks about like kind of predation type stuff. So I'd like to go ahead and play that next.
But I want mostly my dogs to stay active at source, pushing into source when I'm calling alert and when I come in to feed. So when I come in to feed, if my dog's nose is still reaching for source or at source, I'll give them a cookie. And if they continue to hold, I give them another. And if they fling off and come back, I give them another. And I call it worrying the quarry. It's like they're pushing into the source to make me feed them as many times as they want to be fed. And I think it was interesting and empowering for them. And I think it felt a little predatory to them. A lot of dogs that you give them one cookie and they move on and they're happy as can be. That would not be my Whippets. And so negotiating how to get them the maximum amount of reinforcement to keep their energy and their investment as high as possible, I think was part of keeping them successful and part of unlocking the reinforcement chain that was meaningful to them.
You have to know what your dog's going to work for, like what their paycheck is. And I think she does such a great job of using her imagination to figure that out.
Yeah, this goes to your pay scale, Robin. Your A+ reinforcers,
It does. And each dog is different.
Yeah.
And you just have to pay attention. And Crystal's really, really good with that engagement piece on being able to ask those questions. And I think we as trainers get so focused. And this is one of the things that I've really, really started trying hard to do is how few repetitions can I do to get the behavior that I want, which requires actually really thin slices, right? And how well can I pay so that the dog may not understand the increase in work that it's required to do to get the pay that it's getting. And it all comes back to the content for me of contingency for reinforcement that, I started out with Nico. Oh, guess what? All you have to do is keep your nose to source. Now we're all the way up to, you have to stay within 2 feet of source, nose to source or nose close to source and bark once. And now we're up to, now you have to bark for 30 seconds. And it's all for playing tug.
So you want to make sure that you're not doing big leaps in criteria.
Correct.
Right. Because that big leap in criteria might be a little shocking to the dog, and the dog may go, maybe that's not worth it.
Well, the dog, okay, I don't know what the dog thinks. All I know is the dog is like, okay, dude, not paying.
Right.
You broke our contract, not paying, I'm out.
Yeah.
I never want the dog to learn that they can be out when it comes to odor.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I have to build that in those little tiny increments in order to get there.
Yeah. The commitment to the hide,
Yes.
That's actually one of my main drivers when I do a lot of single hide searches. And I know you do a lot of these as well. It's like you have a single hide, you do a single hide and you don't have anything else going, hey, over here, I'm a sexy hide too, right?
Because, oh my God, we are horrible about setting out. Oh my God, let's set out 3 or 4 hides. And now I have to have the urge, right? You can hear them calling kind of like the brownies in the cupboard. We're here. You have to
powder, right? Yeah. Next thing you know, she's missing.
She's losing booty.
Actually, we don't, yeah, she's cute in her booties, but no, we actually don't have that issue really, because when I that is my, it's like a thing for me. And I know it's a thing for you. And it's a thing for,
it is a thing because what happens is you can very, very, very quickly teach a dog to shop.
Exactly.
And they'll go find that other hide because they'll know that we'll work back to this first one and they'll get the opportunity.
Right. Well, that one over there looks easier.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I really think it's, Teresa McPherson, I asked her very early on in my FEMA career, at what point do I start doing 2 subject hides with Moses? Moses is like a year old, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And she looked at me very kindly and very patiently. And she said, when you can do 1 perfectly.
Yeah. Oh.
Because 2 is just a second series of 1.
Yeah.
And that has stuck with me for 15 years.
And there's the other thing that I've noticed. And I see this with a lot of people, right? They set out that really hard hide, but they want their dog to be motivated. So then they set out the easy hide.
Yes.
Right? And I'm like,
correct.
No. It doesn't
Sorry,
work
that was
way,
probably not a kind laugh, but yes,
I know.
Because we think that that's what is going to be motivating to the dog. And the question that I start asking myself, is that motivating for the dog or is that reinforcing for the handler?
And it's making that hard hide that much harder.
Right.
Right. Because now not only are they having to solve that, they have a distraction over here of that easy hide.
Right. Hide placement is huge. That's like two or 3 episodes all on its own. Is hide placement.
2 or 3 episodes? It's going to be like a season. Not that we'll spend a season.
Maybe we should start a hide placement series.
Yeah, when you're talking about the success thing, I was kind of proud of myself this last week. We got to use a library in a middle school. And I asked my training buddy to put out 3 trace sources in this library. And I said, going into it, hold me accountable. My goal, we're going to be successful. We're going to find 1 of them and then we're going to be done. And it's hard to do, you guys, because I'm here thinking he did so well. He did so well. I know he already kind of knows where that next one is. And we could go ahead and just go do that too. And I'm like, no, do not let me do that. I said, I'm going to find 1. We're going to be successful. We're going to have our party. And that's what we did. And we stuck to it. And I told him, I said, the other one's over there, isn't it? They're like, yes, it is. But that's what's important though, is that we can read our dog and that we can, see where that is. And I think what she was saying too, with the worrying the query. Oh, you guys, I loved it so much when she said that, because we have to know kind of what our dogs enjoy. So do you want to know UConn's new ultimate reward? This is like the ultimate.
Yes.
Okay. Go dog furball. Of course. I know that one. Slight tear in it. I put a bag of treats in it, like the Beneful treats. He gets to have the furball. He gets to defluff it, tear some of the shredding off of it. And then he finds the hole. He rips the hole open, rips out some of the white stuff to get to the bag of treats that he then shakes, and the plastic tears and the treats fly everywhere. And then we get to sit there and find all the treats and dissect everything together.
Not a lab.
The ultimate.
Not a lab.
It's not a Labrador.
But it's that whole worrying the query thing. So it's that paycheck. Yeah. It's the, what do you have to do to pay the dog to make it really worth it to them? So yes, he found that little bitty trace thing on the bottom of a bookshelf, on the back of a book. He worked his tail off, and it was so cool to watch him do it. So heck yeah, I'm going to give him his ultimate reward.
And that's fine. Absolutely.
One less furball in the world.
Yeah.
One less furball. Though, Crystal, you are actually, I think you're kind of uniquely qualified in this, because being a decoy or a helper, don't know if I'm ever using
you're correct.
the term. I think you're both, right?
Yeah, I'm both. You can use either one.
You're both. So that makes it easy. But because, in your role as the person being bitten, right? And in that whole role, you're reading the dog and seeing what that dog likes and how to really engage that dog. So it's like you've almost got like a master's in this, And so I think it gives you honestly like a perspective that a lot of us have to kind of flop around and flounder at trying to find that and realizing that we can't, reward every dog with one little piece of cookie and move on, that every dog has their desires and in terms of what they want for a motivator. And, you can't treat them all the same because you're just not going to get repeatable outcomes like that. You're not going to get that, what you want.
I feel like it's the first thing we need to teach.
Yes. It is.
Handlers, how do you play with your dog and how do you find what's reinforcing to your dog?
It is. I 110% agree with you that in an ideal world, that is the first thing that handlers and trainers should learn how to do. But unfortunately, we seemed, that's not the sexy part because the dogs just figure it out, right? Or the people are supposed to figure it out. And I'll be honest, we leave a lot of dogs and we leave a lot of dog on the table because you don't figure out how to play the way that they would like to play.
Throw a ball. That's all they need. Just throw a ball.
Yeah, throw a ball or a Kong. Throw a Kong.
Yeah.
Even with the best intentions, I think that still happens. And I'm
agree.
kind of I'm looking inward at myself.
Me too.
I had a lot of success like with Judd. He wanted a big chunk of hot dog or a big chunk of cheese or whatever, or a big cookie and move on. And he was so motivated by the searching, then working with little Y. And if you decide to just give him one piece of cookie and you think he's going to go through an entire day of searching, no. What I've found is he wears a sign that says "We'll work for a hot dog," and he wants little pieces of hot dog, and he wants you to, do your squealy little happy voice and tell him how incredible he is. And in training, literally, I will reward him for a good 45 seconds on a 30-second hide.
Oh yeah,
and I'll actually reward him for longer than he searches. And then even in trialing, I don't spend 45 seconds. I don't have 45 seconds to reward at a hide, but I've built that up with every hide. And I have to tell you, this is not something I've done his entire career. And this is why I'm saying we have to kind of look inward a little bit, because sometimes we're also guilty of this because we get so used to maybe some other dogs that we're working and, maybe, like little Y was on the back burner, right? Because he didn't really want to search. Well, so, because, he's environment, sensitive, his world got rocked or whatever. But when I started to really pay attention to what he wanted and what he needed, he started to light up and he started to change. And I'm like, oh, you want like 15 small pieces, tiny pieces of hot dog for me to tell you how amazing you are. And it makes you happy, and that was kind of the thing that now he has 2 NW3 titles and now we're going for the third one. And here's this little dog that I'm like, oh, I don't think he'll ever get an NW3.
And here you are.
Well, and I totally,
so much.
I hear that. Absolutely hear that. My story with Dash is I was struggling for toys with Dash. And Crystal's like, well, try this whole little treat game with the fur ball and fetch and go get it and bring it back and get a cookie. And what's really funny is that particular game has entirely changed how we work.
Wow.
Not to mention the fact that I now have to work around with a fur ball in my pocket. But
you're welcome.
Rainbow fur balls.
Thank goodness that they make them in different sizes so I can fit them in my pouch and not look like really funny. And you know what? But I don't care. So that's a huge thing. And then one of the other things that I've really noticed with food reward dogs, the toy reinforced dogs tend to get a whole lot more reinforcers just because the people will play with the dogs longer while they're talking to all of the other people they're standing around.
Yeah.
The food reward dogs tend to get the whole, here's your 3 or 4 cookies. And then I'm going to go talk to people and I'm not going to continue to reward my dog. And so the dog then self-reinforces by going around and sniffing stuff or doing whatever. And so I've actually started telling people they have to sing Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star twice all the way through. And I won't talk to them until they're done. And they have to reinforce their dogs the entire time.
Is it possible? I'm kind of thinking about this. Like if you have a toy reward dog, you're kind of like by definition a part of the reward sequence.
Yeah.
You have to play with the dog. Otherwise it's just like, here's your toy, go off and play with it. No, that's not what they're doing.
Or if you have a really smart border collie, it teaches other people to play with it. And then you don't have to play with the dog.
Everybody rewards the
everybody,
dog.
because they'll go over and labs will do the same thing. They'll just take the dog, the toy and drop it in front of somebody. And you know what? We're appropriately conditioned because we hang out with dog people to pick up the dog toy and throw it. And the dogs still get their reinforcer.
Yeah. So it's kind of like by design, like they get a better reward because you have to be engaged.
Right.
But with food, you just like, here you go.
Yeah. Here's your 3 cookies. We're done.
Yeah. And the dog goes, okay.
So one of the trainers that I learned from was Amy Cook, and she talked about fast food. And it was so fun because it was just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, like one piece of food after another, instead of just a handful of food. I think some people just think, 5 pieces of food in my hand is just as valuable. And what you can find is you can do all the same toy games with food. And so the food can run away like a rabbit. The food can get thrown. The food can get thrown up in the air. And so there's all this great fun things you can do with food. And I even play like a verb game, which is kind of silly, but there's a random verb generator. Sometimes it can be a little naughty, but yeah. So, but one of the pro tips I give people is find a verb, and then can you act that verb out with delivering your toy or food? And it really tickles your brain, but it makes you do things differently. And that's what gets the dog so excited, because they're like, well, you've never done this before. And it's like, no, I haven't. Isn't this great fun? And then you're both being silly, and you can do that with food and toy. And so take advantage of that.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Donuts.
You just type it in Google.
Okay.
There's lots of them.
So random verb generator for y'all.
Yeah, it's great fun. It's a fun challenge. I was going to do that live in class once, and I'm so thankful I didn't, because sometimes it does pick naughty verbs. I was like, oh no, we're not going to do that verb.
Probably a good idea.
No 4-letter verbs.
That's what it was too.
Well, I think that this Holly had so many good tidbits for us. I think that it's been a fun, interesting 2 episodes to talk through all of that stuff. And we definitely thank her for being on the podcast.
Thank you, Holly.
Absolutely. She's just genius. And I really felt her love for not only her dogs, but the sport and training, and even just for everyone involved, the competitors, her students. You really felt her passion through the whole thing. I wish that the internet would have behaved, because it would have been great to share everything she had to say.
Maybe we can have her back.
Yes.
And it was fabulous talking to Holly, and the technology didn't cooperate, but still the fact that we were able to pull out some really amazing things that she said. And let me tell you, she's just an amazing human being, and she's just an amazing trainer. And honestly, I feel very fortunate to call her a good friend. So,
and you can hear it in everything she says.
Yes.
So thank you for bringing her on. We have a new friend.
Yay. Thanks everybody for joining us for this episode. If you have any questions or comments, we'd love to hear from you out on the website. And don't forget to sign up for our freebie. And we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks.
Canine Detection Collaborative! We appreciate the time you spend with us. If you liked this episode, not only should you follow us so you don't miss the next one, but please also rate and review us in your favorite podcast app. For info on collaborating with us, go to k9detectioncollaborative.com. That's K9detectioncollaborative.com, where you can find our socials and pick up our latest monthly freebie. Join us again to talk training in the next episode.